She signed a contract to marry a billionaire for 6 months and $5 million. He needed a wife on paper to save his empire. Neither expected the cold agreement to burn into something neither could walk away from. If the idea of a fake marriage turning achingly real already has your heart racing, drop a below right now and tell me you're ready for the slow burn journey. Welcome back, my wonderful family and friends. If you're tuned in and ready to dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll be bringing you another exciting story you definitely don't want to miss. So, let's get started. Christopher Langford stood at the floor-to-ceiling glass of his Midtown penthouse, Manhattan glittering 30 floors below like a circuit board he owned. 43, dark hair clipped short, jaw sharp enough to cut glass, eyes the color of winter steel. He wore a charcoal Brioni suit the way other men wore armor because it was CEO of Langford Global, a $38 billion conglomerate spanning logistics, tech infrastructure, and private equity. Forbes called him the last cold-blooded deal maker. He didn't disagree. Tonight the silence was heavier than usual. His grandfather's lawyer had left 20 minutes earlier, the will codicil still open on the coffee table like an accusation. To retain full voting control of Langford Global upon my death. Christopher must be legally married for no less than 6 consecutive months prior to or at the time of transfer. No proxies, no trusts, no loopholes. Marriage must be bona fide. Proof of cohabitation and joint public life required. His grandfather, Henry Langford, had added the clause 3 weeks before slipping into hospice. You've built an empire, boy, he'd rasped over the phone. But you've built nothing that lasts. Fix it before I'm gone. Christopher had laughed, cold, sharp. I don't need a wife to run a company. You need a heart to run a life, Henry replied. Find one, or lose it all. The board already knew. Whispers in the halls. A rival faction quietly positioning for a takeover if control fragmented. Christopher had 6 months from Henry's death, 3 weeks away, to comply. He poured scotch, drank it neat, stared at the city he'd conquered. He needed a wife. Not love, not forever. Partner in a transaction. Someone discreet, intelligent, willing to play the part for a price. His lawyer had a shortlist. Christopher had dismissed every name. Too ambitious, too connected, too likely to want more than the payout. Then the lawyer mentioned Agnes Moreau. 31. Brooklyn-born. Registered nurse at a Queens hospital. No social media presence beyond a locked Instagram. Clean background. Quiet life. Currently drowning in medical debt from her mother's long illness. Cancer. 2 years ago. Mother passed 6 months ago. Agnes still paying off hospital bills and funeral costs. No criminal record. No scandals. No exes making noise. She's not looking for a spotlight, the lawyer said. She's looking for a way out. Christopher read the file twice. Looked at the one photo, driver's license scan. Warm brown eyes, soft smile. Hair pulled back in a practical knot. He made the call himself. Agnes answered on the 3rd ring. Hello, Ms. Moreau? This is Christopher Langford. Silence. Then, the Christopher Langford? Yes. A small, incredulous laugh. If this is about a donation or fundraiser, I'm not the person to talk to. I'm a nurse, not. It's not about that. He kept his voice even. I'd like to meet. Tomorrow. Neutral place. I have a proposal. Financial. Significant. Another pause. How significant? $5 million. After taxes. More silence. Where? She asked finally. 11 a.m. The boathouse in Central Park. Private room. I'll be there. She hung up. Christopher stared at the phone. For the first time in years, he felt something dangerously close to anticipation. Agnes arrived 5 minutes early. Jeans, simple navy sweater, hair in a low bun, small crossbody bag clutched like a shield. No makeup, no pretense. She looked exactly like her photo, beautiful in a way that didn't try. Christopher stood when she entered the private room. Waiter disappeared after pouring water. Ms. Moreau. Agnes. He gestured to the chair. She sat. No small talk. You said $5 million, she began. After taxes. Yes. For what? Marriage. 6 months. On paper. You live with me, attend public events as my wife, sign NDAs. No intimacy required. No children. At the end, quiet divorce, full payout, no contact unless you choose otherwise. She studied him long, unflinching. Why me? Because you need the money. Because you have no reason to want more from me than the payout. Because you're not in my world. So no conflicts. And if I say no, you walk out. Nothing changes. She looked down at the water glass. My mother died owing $420,000 in medical bills. I'm on payment plans that eat half my salary. I work doubles to keep up. I'm tired. He waited. But I'm not for sale, she said quietly. Not my body, not my heart. If I do this, it's business. Nothing more. Agreed. She met his eyes. Show me the contract. He slid the folder across the table. Thick, precise. She read every page. Slowly, carefully. Asked 3 questions. About cohabitation proof, about privacy after divorce, about what happened if one of them wanted out early. He answered each one honestly. When she finished, she closed the folder. I want one change, she said. No separate bedrooms in public view. We share a room. Makes it believable. But separate beds. And I keep my job. I'm not quitting nursing to play housewife. He nodded once. Done. She exhaled. Then I'll sign. They signed, 2 copies, witnessed by his lawyer who appeared silently from the next room. She stood. When? 2 weeks. Civil ceremony. Courthouse. Small dinner after for appearances. She nodded. I'll be there. She walked out. Christopher sat alone in the private room. Contract in front of him. He should have felt relief. Instead, he felt the first faint crack in the wall he'd built around his heart. If Agnes's firm, I'm not for sale, or Christopher's quiet anticipation already has you hooked on this slow-burn fake-to-real love. Drop a below or tell me your favorite moment so far. The courthouse smelled of old paper, floor wax, and nervous sweat. Christopher arrived first. Black suit, no tie, hair still damp from a quick shower after a 5 a.m. board call. He waited in the hallway outside the small ceremony room, hands in pockets, staring at the faded linoleum like it might reveal the future. Agnes arrived at 10:57, exactly 3 minutes early. Navy sheath dress, knee-length, simple gold hoop earrings, hair in a low chignon. No makeup beyond a touch of lip balm. She carried a small clutch and a single white rose she'd bought from a street vendor on the way. No family, no friends, just her and the contract. They nodded at each other, polite, professional. The clerk called their names at 11:02. Inside the room. Wood-paneled walls, American flag in the corner, a judge who looked like he'd performed 1,000 of these and still believed in them. 2 witnesses, Christopher's lawyer and a court staffer, stood off to the side. The ceremony lasted 7 minutes. Do you, Christopher Langford, take Agnes Moreau to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death do you part? Christopher's voice was steady. I do. Do you, Agnes Moreau, take Christopher Langford to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death do you part? Agnes met his eyes, brief, unflinching. I do. Rings exchanged, plain platinum bands, no engraving. The judge pronounced them husband and wife. No kiss requested. None offered. They signed the license. The clerk stamped it. The lawyer handed Agnes an envelope, first installment of the contract payment, $500,000 wired that morning, the rest upon completion. Outside on the steps, Christopher turned to her. Dinner tonight. For appearances. Small place in the village. 7 p.m. She nodded. I'll be there. She walked away first. Heels clicking on stone, rose still in her hand. Christopher watched until she disappeared around the corner. Then he exhaled. For the first time in weeks, the pressure in his chest eased. The clause was satisfied. Control was safe, that he told himself that was all that mattered. The penthouse felt different that evening when Agnes arrived. She'd packed 1 suitcase. Practical, rolling, nothing extravagant. Christopher met her at the private elevator. Took the bag without asking. "Welcome home," he said, dry, almost ironic. She gave a small smile. "For 6 months." He led her through the foyer. Marble floors, modern art on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson. The space was beautiful but cold. Gray tones, sharp lines, no personal touches. "Your room," he said, opening a door off the main hallway. King bed, ensuite bath, walk-in closet already stocked with a few basics his stylist had chosen. Sizes pulled from her driver's license info. "Mine's across the hall. We'll share the master suite for appearances when needed, public photos, unexpected visitors, but separate beds." As agreed. She nodded. "Thank you." He showed her the kitchen, professional grade, barely used. "Chef comes 3 times a week. Or order whatever you want. Cards on the counter." "I'll cook sometimes," she said. "I like it." He paused, surprised. "You don't have to." "I know." Dinner was at a quiet Italian place in the West Village, corner booth, low lights, no paparazzi. They ordered wine, pasta, kept conversation light. Logistics, schedules, ground rules, no overnight guests. No personal questions unless necessary for public stories. Public affection limited to hand-holding, arm around waist. Nothing more. Agnes listened, nodded, added one rule of her own. "I keep working. Full shifts at the hospital. No quitting. No allowance beyond the contract." Agreed. They ate in near silence after that. Not uncomfortable, just careful. Back at the penthouse, she unpacked while he worked in his office. She found him there at 11 p.m., still in his shirt sleeves, laptop open, staring at spreadsheets. "Good night," she said from the doorway. He looked up. "Good night, Agnes." She hesitated. "You don't have to call me that. Agnes is fine." A ghost of a smile. "Good night, Agnes." She went to her room, closed the door, leaned against it for a long moment. The first week was mechanical. They moved in sync like strangers sharing an Airbnb. Morning coffee, black for him, oat milk latte for her. Polite good mornings, separate commutes. She took the subway, he took the car. Evenings of separate routines. She cooked once, simple pasta primavera, and left a plate in the warmer for him. He ate it at 1 a.m., standing at the counter, surprised at how good it tasted. Public appearances started small. A charity gala where she wore the emerald gown his stylist sent, stood beside him for photos, smiled when cameras flashed. She answered questions with calm honesty. "We met through mutual friends." It was fast, but right. No lies, just omissions. The press ate it up. Langford's surprise bride, nurse steals billionaire's heart. Agnes read the headlines on her break at the hospital. Rolled her eyes. Texted him. "They think I stole your heart. Should I return it?" His reply, "Keep it. Looks better on you." She stared at the screen. Unexpected warmth spreading through her chest. Then came the first real crack point 3 weeks in. Christopher's grandfather, Henry, took a turn. Hospice called at 2 a.m. Christopher answered, voice calm, but Agnes heard the tremor when he hung up. She found him in the living room, still in yesterday's clothes, staring at the city. "He's asking for me," he said. "And my wife." She didn't hesitate. "I'll go with you." They drove to the hospice in silence. Henry's room was dim. Beeping monitors, oxygen hiss, the smell of antiseptic and fading life. Henry looked small in the bed. Skin like paper, eyes bright despite everything. "Christopher," he rasped. Christopher took his hand. "I'm here." Henry's gaze shifted. "And this is?" "Agnes," she said softly, stepping forward. "Your grandson's wife." Henry studied her. Pretty, kind eyes. "You love him." Agnes glanced at Christopher, heart thudding, then back to Henry. "We're figuring it out." Henry chuckled, weak, wet, honest. "I like that." He squeezed her hand. "Take care of him. He's terrible at taking care of himself." "I will." Henry looked at Christopher. "You did good, boy. Don't screw it up." He closed his eyes. Breathing slowed. They sat with him until the end. 3:47 am. Henry slipped away quietly, hand in Christopher's, Agnes's hand on top. In the hallway afterward, Christopher leaned against the wall, eyes dry, but face gray. Agnes didn't speak, just stood beside him. When he finally moved, she walked with him to the car. Back at the penthouse, dawn light was just touching the windows. He stopped at her door. "Thank you." "You're welcome." He hesitated. "I didn't expect you to be there. Like that." "I'm your wife," she said simply. "On paper or not. You needed someone." He looked at her, long searching. Something shifted in his eyes. Not love, not yet, but gratitude, and something softer. "Good night, Agnes." "Good night, Christopher." She closed her door, leaned against it, heart racing. The next days blurred. Funeral arrangements, calls from the board, quiet grief. Christopher threw himself into work, but Agnes noticed the small changes. He came home earlier, ate the dinner she left, asked about her shifts. One evening, 2 weeks after Henry's death, she found him in the kitchen at midnight, shirt sleeves rolled, sleeves wet, attempting to make scrambled eggs. She leaned in the doorway. "You're burning them." He looked up, caught. "I thought you might be hungry after your shift." She stepped closer, took the spatula from him, turned down the heat. "Sit." He did. She finished the eggs, added toast, set the plate in front of him. He stared at it like it was a foreign object. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "I know." She sat across from him. "But I wanted to." He ate slowly. She watched, quiet. When he finished, he looked at her. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Be grateful. Be cared for." She reached across, touched his hand, brief, warm. "You don't have to know. Just let it happen." He turned his hand, laced their fingers. They sat like that, plates cooling, city humming below, until the silence felt too full. He stood, pulled her up with him. "Agnes." She looked up. He leaned down, slow, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their first real kiss was tentative, lips brushing, testing. Then deeper, his hand in her hair, her fingers gripping his shirt. Not desperate, not performative, just honest. When they parted, foreheads touching, he whispered, "This wasn't in the contract." She smiled against his mouth. "No, it wasn't." They didn't go further that night, just kissed again, slow, exploring, then said goodnight at their separate doors, but the wall had cracked wider. The next month brought more appearances. Galas, benefits, a weekend in the Hamptons for a board retreat where she charmed the wives and listened while Christopher negotiated quietly in corners. She watched him. Saw the way he deflected compliments, the way his shoulders tensed when someone mentioned Henry, the way he always found her across the room and checked in with a look. One night, after a black tie event, both of them tired, she found him on the terrace, shirt collar open, scotch in hand, staring at the skyline. She stepped beside him. "Penny for them?" He gave a small laugh. "They're not worth that much." She waited. He exhaled. "I keep thinking about what Henry said, about having a heart. I spent years convincing myself I didn't need one. That control was enough. Then you showed up and refused to be controlled. And suddenly control feels empty." She leaned against the railing. "I'm not here to fix you, Christopher. I'm here because we made a deal. But if something real is growing, I'm not running from it." He turned to her. "What if I ruin it? What if I go back to being the man who fixes everything with money? Then I'll call you on it." She smiled, small, fierce. "And you'll listen, because you're learning." He set the glass down, pulled her close. They kissed. Longer this time, hands exploring, bodies pressing. When they parted, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I want more than 6 months," he whispered. Her heart stuttered. "Then tell me when the time comes." He nodded. But the contract still had 3 months left. And the board was watching. If the midnight egg scene, the terrace confession, or that first real kiss after the funeral has you feeling the slow burn ignite, drop a or your favorite beat below. The weeks after Henry's funeral settled into a rhythm that felt almost dangerously comfortable. Christopher came home earlier most nights, 7:30 instead of midnight. carrying takeout from places Agnes had mentioned liking or, increasingly, helping in the kitchen. He learned she preferred garlic sautéed in olive oil before adding tomatoes, that she hummed old jazz standards when she chopped vegetables, that her laugh, rare but bright, started low in her throat and ended in a soft exhale. Agnes kept her nursing shifts, 3 12-hour days, 1 night shift a week. She came home smelling faintly of antiseptic and coffee, feet aching, but she never complained. Instead, she'd kick off her clogs by the door, pour a glass of the red wine he'd started stocking because she once said she liked something not too sweet, not too heavy, and ask about his day. They talked, really talked. Not about the contract, not about the board or the will, about small things. The patient who'd thanked her with a drawing of a cat, the merger he was negotiating that felt more like a chess game than business, the way the city looked from the penthouse at 3 a.m. when neither could sleep. Physical intimacy grew slowly, carefully. First it was hands brushing when they reached for the same wine bottle. Then a kiss goodnight that lingered longer each time. One rainy Thursday she came home soaked, umbrella forgotten at the hospital, and he met her at the elevator with a towel. Dried her hair gently, towel draped over her shoulders, fingers combing through wet strands. She looked up at him, eyes soft, unguarded, and he kissed her. This time they didn't stop at the hallway. They moved to the master suite. Separate beds still in place, but meaningless now. Clothes fell away slowly, reverently. No rush, no performance. Just skin against skin, breath mingling, hands learning curves and scars and the places that made the other gasp. Afterward they lay tangled, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy circles on her back. "I didn't plan this," he whispered into her hair. She smiled against his skin. "I know. Neither did I." But the contract still hung between them, 3 months remaining, a finish line neither wanted to acknowledge. The board noticed the change. At the next quarterly meeting, virtual, Christopher in his office, Agnes asleep in the next room. He fielded the first direct question. Christopher, Victoria Langford, distant cousin, longtime board member, leaned forward on her screen. "The marriage appears convincing, but we need assurance it's sustainable. The clause requires 6 months of bona fide cohabitation. We've had reports of your wife continuing full-time employment. Some question whether this is truly a marital home or a convenient arrangement." Christopher's jaw tightened. "My personal life is not up for audit. It is when control of the company hinges on it." Another board member cut in. "We need documentation, joint accounts, shared travel, perhaps a public statement affirming intent to remain married beyond the required period." Agnes walked in then, wearing one of his shirts, hair mussed from sleep, carrying 2 mugs of tea. She froze in the doorway when she saw the video wall full of faces. Christopher muted his mic. "Go back to bed. I'll handle it." She shook her head, stepped closer. "They're talking about me." He unmuted. "My wife is here. Say what you need to say to both of us." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Ms. Moreau, Mrs. Langford, we appreciate your cooperation, but the board requires clarity. Is this marriage intended to continue after the 6-month mark? Or is it contractual?" Agnes set the mugs down, stepped into frame beside him. "My marriage is not your business. But since you asked, I love your CEO. I'm not going anywhere unless he asks me to. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a shift in 6 hours." She walked out. The room went silent on the call. Christopher ended the meeting without another word. "I in the bedroom." Agnes was already pulling on scrubs. He followed. "You didn't have to do that." "I did." She zipped her bag. "They needed to hear it from me. Not you defending me. Me choosing you." He caught her wrist, gentle. "You said you love me." She looked up, eyes shining. "I do." He kissed her. Deep, grateful, a little desperate. "I love you too." She smiled against his mouth. "I know." But love didn't stop the pressure. The board pushed harder, quiet audits of their joint life, requests for Agnes to attend more events, suggestions that she reduce her hours for the sake of appearances. Anonymous leaks to business blogs. Langford's marriage under scrutiny. Is the nurse bride the real deal? Agnes felt the shift at work. Colleagues who once teased her about marrying up now asked careful questions. A few patients recognized her from photos. One elderly woman in oncology squeezed her hand. Don't let them change you, dear. Rich men come and go. Kindness stays. Agnes smiled tight. I'm trying. At home, the tension crept in point one night. Late March, rain lashing the windows. She found Christopher in his office, staring at a draft email to his lawyer. She leaned in the doorway. What is it? He minimized the screen too quickly. Nothing. Don't. She stepped inside. We said no secrets. He exhaled. Turned the monitor toward her. Draft subject: Amendment to Marital Agreement, Extension Clause. The body outline terms. Additional 2 years, increased payout, $10 million, options for quiet dissolution or continuation. It was framed as protective for both of them, but the subtext was clear. He was planning for the possibility that love might not last beyond the contract. Agnes read it twice, then looked at him. You were going to extend it, without telling me. I was considering options, in case I walk away with the money and leave you exposed. Her voice cracked. Or in case you decide you're done playing house? He stood. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Tears burned. Because from where I'm standing, you're still hedging. Still treating this like a deal you can renegotiate if the terms change. He crossed to her. Agnes, I love you, but I've lost everything once. My parents, my trust in people. Henry's will force me to face that I've been running from real connection my whole life. I'm terrified of losing you when the contract ends. This was insurance. Insurance. She laughed, bitter, broken. You don't insure love, Christopher. You choose it. Every day. Without a backup plan. She turned to leave. He caught her arm, gentle. Don't walk away. Please. She looked at his hand on her arm, then at his face, raw, afraid. I'm not walking away, she said quietly. But I need space. I'm going to my old apartment tonight. I need to think. He released her. She packed a small bag, kissed his cheek, soft, sad, before stepping into the elevator. The penthouse felt emptier than it ever had. Agnes spent 3 days at her old Brooklyn walk-up. Tiny, cluttered, full of memories of her mother. She cried. She journaled. She called her best friend from nursing school and talked for hours. On the 4th day, she went back to the hospital, extra shift, needing the distraction. A patient in palliative care, a woman in her 80s, asked Agnes to sit. You look like you're carrying the world, child. Agnes smiled weakly. Feels like it. The woman took her hand. Love isn't safe. Never has been. But the safest thing is regret. Don't let fear write your ending. Agnes cried then, quiet, cleansing tears. That night she went home. To the penthouse, Christopher was waiting in the living room. Lights low, no scotch, just him in a t-shirt and sweatpants, looking like he hadn't slept. She set her bag down. He stood, slow, uncertain. I tore it up, he said. The amendment. The lawyer shredded it this morning. No extensions. No backups. If you stay, it's because you choose to. If you go, I'll sign whatever you need for the payout. No strings. She walked to him, took his face in her hands. I don't want the money, she whispered. I want you, the real you, the one who burns eggs and holds me when I'm scared and lets me see the parts you hide from everyone else. Tears slipped down his cheeks. First time she'd seen him cry. I'm yours, he said, voice breaking. No contract, no clause, just me, choosing you. Every day. She kissed him. Slow, deep, full of everything they'd almost lost. They made love that night. Not careful, not tentative. Urgent. Healing. Hands and mouths and whispered promises until the rain stopped and dawn crept in the morning. Tangled in sheets, he traced the line of her spine. Marry me again, he whispered. For real. No deadline. No payout. Just us. She lifted her head, smiled soft, certain. Yes, but the board wasn't finished. 2 weeks later, April board meeting, Victoria called an emergency session. Christopher, she began. The 6-month mark approaches. We've reviewed the cohabitation evidence. It's convincing. but we need final confirmation of intent to continue the marriage beyond the required period. A sworn affidavit from both parties. Otherwise, control transfers to the trust committee. Agnes, sitting beside him this time, hand in his under the table, looked at the screen full of faces. She spoke first. You want proof we're staying married? She lifted their joined hands. Here it is. We're renewing vows next month. Private. No press. But legal. Permanent. And if any of you try to use this marriage as leverage again, I'll make sure every shareholder knows exactly how little you value the man who built this company. Silence. Christopher squeezed her hand. Victoria exhaled. Duly noted. The meeting ended. Outside the office, in the hallway, Christopher pulled Agnes into his arms. You were fierce, he murmured. I learned from the best. They kissed right there under fluorescent lights, no cameras, no audience. Just them. And for the first time, the future felt wide open. No clause. Just choice. Every single day. If Agnes is quiet, I don't want the money. I want you, or Christopher's tearful. I'm yours. No contract. Or that hallway kiss under office lights has your heart full. Drop a comment below. The vow renewal ceremony was planned for mid-May. Private, intimate, just them and a handful of people who mattered. A small rooftop garden venue in Brooklyn Heights that Agnes had found online. Simple ivy-covered trellis, string lights, city skyline in the distance. No press. No board members. Just a judge, Abigail's mom, a few hospital friends, and Lilia's flower girl, insisting on wearing her dragon-embroidered dress again. They'd written new vows, honest ones this time, no script from a contract. But the board had other plans. Victoria Langford called an emergency session the week before, virtual, urgent, marked confidential, immediate action required. Christopher joined from his home office. Agnes sat beside him on the couch, out of frame but close enough to hear every word. Victoria appeared first. Face tight, voice clipped. Christopher, we've reviewed the proposed renewal ceremony. Convenient timing. But we have concerns. The original clause required 6 months of bona fide marriage. Extending it indefinitely raises questions of intent. Some board members believe the marriage was orchestrated to secure control, and now you're attempting to lock it in permanently without proper scrutiny. Christopher's hand tightened on the mouse. The marriage is real. We're renewing because we want to, not because we have to. Another board member, Richard Klein, longtime ally turned skeptic, leaned in. We need proof. A full forensic review of your joint finances, cohabitation records, and a sworn deposition from Mrs. Langford confirming no coercion or financial inducement beyond the initial agreement. Agnes's breath caught. She stepped into frame before Christopher could stop her. You want me to swear under oath that I wasn't coerced? Her voice was steel. I'll do it tomorrow. But know this, I love him. I chose him. And if you keep treating our marriage like a transaction you can audit, you'll lose the man who built this company from the ground up. Victoria's eyes narrowed. We're protecting shareholder value. You're protecting your own power, Agnes shot back. And you're doing it by questioning the one thing he's finally allowed himself to have, real love. Silence on the call. Christopher muted briefly, looked at her, raw gratitude in his eyes, then unmuted. The renewal proceeds. The marriage continues. If you want to challenge it legally, do so. But know this, I own 51%. You can't force me out. And if you try to hurt her or us, you'll answer to every shareholder who values long-term stability over short-term games. He ended the call. Agnes exhaled, shaking. They're not going to stop. They will if we make it impossible for them not to. But the pressure didn't ease. It escalated. 2 days later, a courier arrived at the penthouse with a thick envelope. Legal documents. The board had filed a motion in Delaware Chancery Court, where Langford Global was incorporated, seeking an injunction to delay the renewal and appoint an independent committee to review the marriage's authenticity. Attached was a leaked internal memo. Someone had fed them details of the original contract, the payout, the separate bedrooms clause from the first draft. The memo was damning. Evidence suggests the marriage was entered into solely to satisfy the will clause. Continuation appears motivated by asset protection rather than genuine affection. Recommend immediate freeze on voting control transfer. Agnes read it on the couch, hands trembling. Christopher watched from across the room, face ashen. "They're trying to invalidate us," she whispered. "They're trying to invalidate me." He crossed to her, took the papers. "I'll fight it. Lawyers are already drafting responses." She looked up, eyes shining with hurt. "But they have proof. The contract existed. The separate bedrooms. The payout schedule. It looks exactly like what they're saying. A deal." He knelt in front of her. "It started as a deal. But it's not anymore. You know that." "I know that." "Do I?" Her voice cracked. "I keep replaying the amendment you almost signed. The backup plan. What if part of you is still hedging? What if when the pressure gets too high, you fall back to control?" He took her hands, firm, desperate. "I tore it up. I chose you. I'm choosing you right now." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Then prove it. Not to them. To me." He stood, pulled her up with him. "I will." That night he made the call he'd been avoiding. To his grandfather's old lawyer, the one who drafted the will clause. "Henry wanted me to have a heart," Christopher said. "I think I finally found one. I'm dropping the fight for control. Let the trust committee take over if they want. I'm walking away from the CEO chair. Permanently." The lawyer paused. "You understand what that means? You lose operational power. The board will move fast." "I know. And the marriage clause becomes moot. No transfer to protect." "Exactly." He hung up. Agnes watched from the doorway, eyes wide. "You just gave it up?" "I gave up the thing that was keeping me from you." He crossed to her. "The empire was my cage. You're my freedom." She searched his face, long searching, then threw her arms around him. "I love you," she whispered. "So much." He held her, tight, like she might vanish. "I love you more." But the board moved faster than expected. The next morning before dawn, a process server knocked. Emergency hearing scheduled for 10 a.m. in Delaware. The injunction was granted temporarily. Voting control frozen pending review of the marriage's validity. Christopher stared at the papers. "They're forcing my hand." Agnes took them from him. "Read the key line." Plaintiffs allege the marriage was fraudulent from inception, citing prenuptial contract documents and lack of genuine intent. Defendant must appear with spouse to testify under oath. She looked at him. "They want me on the stand. To admit it started as a deal." He nodded, slow, defeated. "You don't have to go. I can fight this alone." "No," she straightened. "We go together. And we tell the truth." The courtroom in Wilmington was cold. Marble floors, high ceilings, wooden benches worn smooth by years of disputes. Christopher wore a dark suit. Agnes wore the same navy dress from their first meeting, simple, honest. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, called the session to order. Victoria's lawyer presented first. The original contract, emails, the amendment draft recovered from deleted files, timelines showing the marriage aligned perfectly with the will deadline. Mr. Langford entered this union solely to preserve control. The lawyer argued. The continuation is equally strategic. We ask the court to invalidate the marriage for purposes of the will clause and transfer control to the committee. Christopher's lawyer rose, calm, prepared. Your Honor, the marriage is valid under New York law. The will required bona fide marriage, not perfect intent at inception. My client and his wife have lived together, shared a life, and publicly affirmed their commitment. Intent evolved as it does in real relationships. The judge looked at Agnes. Mrs. Langford, step forward. Agnes walked to the stand, heart hammering. Sworn in. The opposing lawyer approached. Mrs. Langford, did you enter this marriage for love? No, her voice steady. I entered it for $5 million. Gasps in the gallery, mostly board proxies. And now? The lawyer pressed. Now I stay because I love him. She looked at Christopher. Eyes locked on his. Because he's the man who held me when my mother died. Who learned to make my coffee exactly right. Who gave up an empire because he didn't want to lose me. I love him more than any amount of money. and I choose him every day. Silence. The judge turned to Christopher. Mr. Langford? He stood. I married her to satisfy a clause. I stayed because she showed me what life could be. I'm stepping down as CEO. Control can transfer. I don't need it anymore. I need her. He walked to the stand, took Agnes's hand over the rail. The judge watched long, assessing, then. The court finds the marriage bona fide under the spirit and letter of the will. The injunction is dissolved. Control remains with Mr. Langford, for as long as he wishes to retain it. The board lawyers protested. The judge raised a hand. He's already stated his intent to step down. That's his choice. Case closed. Outside the courthouse, sun breaking through clouds, Agnes turned to Christopher. You gave it up. For real. I did. He cupped her face. And I'd do it again. She kissed him, deep, tear-streaked, victorious. The board didn't fight further. Victoria resigned the next week. The transition to the new CEO was smooth. Christopher stayed on as advisor part-time on his terms. The rooftop renewal went ahead, small, perfect. No cameras. Just them, Lily tossing petals, vows spoken with shaking voices and full hearts. I choose you, Agnes said. Without clauses, without deadlines, without fear. I choose you, Christopher answered. Forever. No backups. No escape. Just us. They kissed under string lights. Lily cheering, friends clapping, city sparkling below. And in that moment, rooftop wind in their hair, rings glinting, love no longer conditional. They were free. Not from money. From the need to prove they deserved it. If the courtroom truth-telling, Christopher's, I need her, or the rooftop renewal kiss after all the battles and boardroom threats melted your heart, drop your honest reaction below. The rooftop renewal in Brooklyn Heights became the quiet pivot point everything else turned on. No cameras captured it. No headlines followed. Just the soft glow of string lights, the hum of distant traffic, and the small circle of people who mattered most. Lily tossed rose petals with dramatic flair, giggling when they stuck to her dragon dress. Abigail's mom dabbed her eyes with a tissue she'd brought, just in case. A few hospital friends stood off to the side, smiling like they'd witnessed something sacred. Christopher and Agnes stood under the ivy trellis. Simple linen clothes, no tuxedo, no gown. The judge read the basic civil language, but they'd insisted on speaking their own vows first. Agnes went first, voice steady, eyes locked on his. I came to you with a contract in my hand and walls around my heart. I told myself it was just business, just survival. But you showed up, not with promises or power, but with patience. You learned how I take my coffee. You held me when grief felt too heavy to carry alone. You gave up the one thing you thought defined you so I wouldn't have to choose between love and independence. I promise to choose you every day, not because I have to, but because I want to. I promise to fight for us when it's hard, to laugh with you when it's easy, to remind you that you're enough without an empire. I love you, Christopher Langford, not the billionaire, the man. Forever. Lily sniffled loudly beside them. Someone handed her another tissue. Christopher swallowed, voice rough when he spoke. I thought love was a liability, something that could be bought, managed, or avoided. I built walls so high no one could hurt me, and no one could reach me. Then you walked through the door with honesty I'd never seen and strength I didn't know existed. You refused to be bought. You refused to be managed. You simply stayed. Through boardroom battles, through my doubts, through every moment I tried to protect myself instead of letting you in. I promised to keep choosing you, to keep showing up, to build a life with you that has nothing to do with net worth and everything to do with heart. I love you, Agnes Morrow Langford. I choose you. Always. The judge smiled, small, genuine. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again. They kissed, slow, deep, certain, while Lily cheered and petals rained down. Afterward they ate simple food on the rooftop. Pasta salad, garlic bread, tres leches cake from a local bakery Agnes loved. No speeches, just laughter, stories, quiet toasts. When the last guest left, hugs exchanged, promises to visit. They stood alone under the lights, city sparkling below. Agnes leaned against the railing. "We did it." Christopher wrapped his arms around her from behind. "We did." She turned in his embrace. "No more clauses. No more deadlines. Just us." They kissed again. Longer this time, wind tugging at their clothes, stars faint above the city glow. The next months unfolded gently. Christopher's transition out of the CEO role was smoother than anyone expected. Elena Vasquez took over, sharp, steady, respected. The board grumbled at first, but the stock held steady. Analysts called it a mature succession. Christopher stayed on as non-executive chairman, part-time advisory only. He spent mornings in the home office, afternoons with Agnes, evenings cooking dinner or reading in the living room while she caught up on charts. Agnes kept nursing, reduced to part-time 3 days a week. She loved the work too much to leave completely. But she also started something new. A small nonprofit she dreamed about for years. Heartline Haven, a support network for families facing long-term illness. Grief counseling, financial navigation, art therapy for kids. She used part of her contract payout, the portion she'd accepted before everything changed, as seed money. Christopher matched it quietly, no fanfare, just a wire transfer with a note. "For the hearts you've always protected." They moved out of the Midtown penthouse 6 months later. Bought a brownstone in Park Slope, 4 stories, small backyard, room for a garden Agnes wanted to plant. The master suite had 2 desks side by side, one for her nonprofit paperwork, one for his advisory calls. The kitchen became their favorite room. Sunday mornings making pancakes, weeknight dinners where they talked about everything and nothing. Lily, now 9, thrived. She called Christopher Dad without hesitation. He helped with science projects, building a solar oven that actually worked, taught her chess. She beat him regularly now. Read her fantasy novels aloud with dramatic voices. When she had nightmares about losing people, he sat on her bed until she fell back asleep. Hand in hers, no words needed. One evening, late summer, windows open, cicadas humming. Agnes found him on the rooftop terrace they'd added to the brownstone. He was staring at the skyline, glass of wine in hand, expression soft. She slipped beside him. "Penny for them?" He smiled, small, real. "I was thinking about Henry." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Good thoughts. The best." He set the glass down. "He told me once that empires don't keep you warm at night. I thought he was wrong. Turns out he was the smartest man I ever knew." Agnes laced their fingers. "You kept the company alive. You honored him. And then you chose something better." He turned to her. "I chose you." They kissed, slow, grateful, city lights flickering below like stars that had fallen to earth. Years passed, gentle, steady. Full. Agnes's nonprofit grew. 3 locations now, grants coming in, volunteers from the hospital and beyond. She still worked shifts when they were short-staffed. Patients remembered her as the nurse who listened like she had all the time in the world. Christopher consulted part-time, mostly pro bono for education and healthcare startups. He mentored young CEOs, taught them the lessons Henry had taught him, plus a few he'd learned himself. That success without heart was hollow, that real power was in letting go. They traveled, small trips at first, weekends in the Hudson Valley, a week in Maine, then longer ones. Italy. Agnes wanted to see the Amalfi Coast. Japan. Christopher wanted to show her Kyoto temples. Lily came too. Camera always in hand, documenting everything. One spring. Lily, 15 now, tall and fierce, already accepted early to a pre-med program. She sat them down at the kitchen table. "I want to ask you something serious." Agnes and Christopher exchanged glances. Braced. "I want to change my last name to Langford Moreau. Both of you. Because you both raised me. You both chose me. I want the world to know." Agnes's eyes filled. Christopher's throat worked. Lily continued, voice steady. "And I want to start a scholarship fund in Grandma's name, through Heartline Haven, for kids who lose parents to cancer. I want to use some of the trust money Grandpa left me." Christopher reached across, took her hand. "You're sure?" "I've never been surer." Agnes hugged her. Tight, teary. "We'd be honored." The name change went through quietly. The scholarship launched with a small ceremony at the nonprofit. Agnes cutting the ribbon, Lily speaking, Christopher standing in the back, eyes shining with pride. That night, after guests left, after Lily went to bed, they sat on the rooftop again. Agnes leaned against him, his arm around her shoulders. "She's going to change the world," Agnes whispered. "She already has." He kissed her temple. "Just like her mother." They stayed there until the city quieted, lights dimming, stars peeking through. Years later, Lily in medical school, Agnes's non-profit national, Christopher's advisory work focused on mentoring women in STEM. They sat on the same rooftop, older now, silver threading their hair, hands still finding each other instinctively. Agnes looked at him. Same warm brown eyes, same quiet strength. "Remember the courthouse?" she asked softly. He smiled, small, remembering. 7 minutes. No kiss. And now. He pulled her closer. Now every day feels like a vow. She rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat she'd come to know better than her own. "We chose right," she whispered. "We did." They kissed, slow, familiar, full of years and promises kept. Below them, the city hummed on, sirens, laughter, life. Above them, stars watched, quiet witnesses to a love that had started as a signature on paper and ended as the truest thing either had ever known. No clause and no deadline. Just choice. Every single day, and it was enough. Thank you so much for watching my story all the way to the end. Your support means everything. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.